Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming to our panel, Gaming to Lead the Way into the Metaverse. My name is Dean Takahashi. I'm the lead writer for GamesBeat at VentureBeat. And I guess my little sort of story about getting into the latest wave of the Metaverse started in 2016. We had we do conferences every year, and we had a GamesBeat conference about the intersection of science fiction, technology, and games. And Tim Sweeney from Epic Games was one of those people who said, oh yeah, we should be able to build the metaverse in a few years. And this was in 2016, I was going, what are you talking about? And then Jensen Huang, about the same time, the CEO of NVIDIA, started saying that science fiction is becoming reality. And he was talking about advances that everybody had thought would never happen, started to happen, and that was with artificial intelligence, right? And so once you get things happening in one space, then they sort of start cascading upon each other, and they make these things that seem like they're impossible more realistic. And so I'm kind of coming at this through science fiction. We actually did our first Metaverse conference in January of 2020, and that seemed early relative to Mark Zuckerberg putting it on everybody's radar in October of 2021 by changing his Facebook's name to Meta. And we have Metaverse talks coming up at all of our gaming conferences now. We have one coming in on May 22 and 23 in Santa Monica, and that's my sort of familiarity with the Metaverse. I've been a tech writer for about 34 years and a games writer for about 26 years as well. And I'm going to have my panelists introduce themselves, and I'll start with Nils right here.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Nils Wollny. I'm CEO and co-founder of Holoride. We built a technology platform that enables XR devices in cars by using the car data and location, so acceleration, braking, steering angle, wheel ticks, GPS position, and sync this with the motion, sync the motion and the location of the car with the content being displayed on the device. So simply said, we bring VR to cars. Our journey started also in 2015, actually, when I was still working at the German car manufacturer Audi. We were looking into ways how to entertain passengers, because back then the auto industry focused very much on drivers and car buyers only, not so much on passengers. And back in 2015, autonomous driving was the metaverse back then, so a very hot topic, and everybody believed by now we'll have autonomous vehicles. But at the car manufacturers, they were all looking into new use cases for passengers. And we came up with the idea merging like the motion and the location with immersive content to create new experiences that are unique to the car. And we convinced our board of management to spin this out back in 2018. So we announced at CES 2019 our inception. We had a great showcase together with Audi and Disney on a racetrack, Speed Vegas, outside Vegas, but we had gaming PCs in the trunk, hardwired to the central computing entity of the car, a wired Oculus Rift, a closed track, an experience tailored to the track. And now 4 years later, the commercial product is available with the HTC Vive Flow in Holoride-ready Audi cars, or with our retrofit in any car on any road. So I'm glad to be back. It's a very, very special time this year, and thanks for having me on the panel.
Yeah, thank you. And Jeri?
I'm Jeri Ellsworth. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Tilt5. We make an AR platform. It's glasses for playing tabletop games with a large emphasis on social gaming, where you can sit around the table and play holographic games with your friends. My experience or background with the Metaverse started when I was working at Valve Software in their hardware R&D department, and this guy showed up. I didn't know who he was, took him on a tour, found out that he coined the term Metaverse, and that was my first exposure to this term.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Dirk Lueth. I'm co-founder and co-CEO of Upland. We are actually a metaverse or a platform for the metaverse, which is based on the real world. We're currently live in 20 cities across the US. Originally, we were inspired by Monopoly. Everyone knows probably how that works, right? You have to buy land and you have to collect stuff and so on. So that's how we started out. Today, fast forward, Upland is basically you can run and operate your own businesses in Upland, can sell digital collectibles, other items to other people. We have partnerships with just recently with FIFA, so you can get the Messi goal in when you go to Upland. We've been partnerships also with the NFLPA. But going forward, we see Upland becoming more the super app of the metaverse. So we introduced a developer platform where other developers can build something, third-party developers can build on top of Upland. One short story is we incorporated already in 2018. Our URL is called upland.me for metaverse. We said it at that time, but we said, oh, we cannot use that because metaverse, no one will understand what it actually means, right? Of course, then 2 years later on, it has completely changed. Actually, I don't know if anyone knows what metaverse is, but I think that's part of the panel here today. I also wear a second hat. I'm also co-founder and chairman of the Open Metaverse Alliance for Web3, OMA3.org, where over 1,000 companies have signed up so far. So if you're in that space, I invite you to sign up as well. Our vision is really to enable interoperability across the metaverse.
Hey everybody, my name is Mark Stutzman. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Area 15, which is, if anyone's local, it's an experiential venue that we opened in Las Vegas about 3 years ago. And you have to see it to really understand what the heck it is. But it's kind of a black box of the most amazing curated experiences throughout the world, as well as interesting attractions and food and beverage and events, and it's kind of like walking into a crazy video game, which is how I feel every time I walk through the doors, every time I fly back from New York. But for us, it's all about the physical experience and helping folks kind of move from spectator to participant. And so everything that we're doing is about enabling our guests to really participate with everything they're doing at Area 15. And it turns out that it was such a crazy idea that it was an amazing idea. And we've been packed since we opened our doors 3 years ago. And so first, get this out of the way. I invite you all to come over and check it out. Bring your CES badge. You'll get 20% off throughout the venue. Come on, I got to do my job to pitch the place, right?
Why can't we have 30%?
Yeah.
I visited this week and I had a great time. Very interesting. It strikes me as a Burning Man, in a warehouse, or a Burning Man in the city, I guess. Anyway, so for our topic here of gaming leading the way into the metaverse, we're taking a position basically that it makes the most sense that if we're gonna have a metaverse, then the gaming people are gonna lead the way. Part of that title comes from Jason Rubin, who's leading a lot of the game efforts at Meta, and he spoke at an event and he said, if you're going to build the metaverse, you're going to have to build it with a game engine, and the people that know how to use game engines are game developers, and so it follows that game developers are going to be the ones that have to show everybody else the way. Right, and I think that makes sense. The panel we wound up with here is actually unusual in the sense that they're not all strictly, metaverse people, as you would expect. They're not from Roblox, they're not from Epic Games and Fortnite. They're coming at it from very different directions. And so I think my first question here is really, given our title, what's your own sort of nuance on it, or what is your take on how gaming leads the way into the metaverse? And Jeri, why don't you start us off?
Well, from my background of designing toys and working at video game companies, I'm a strong believer that gaming really leads a lot of technology, and there's probably a couple reasons for that. Part of it is it's a little bit easier to delight people than make a productivity tool. So, when I was taught to design toys, I was taught when it's fun, it's fun. It doesn't matter what the technology is behind it. And so my perspective on what we've done at Tilt 5 is we haven't tried to synthesize everybody's world and take them out of their beautiful world. We think that, we can simplify the problem. Let's make something that's really relatable for everyone and give them a little slice of whatever this metaverse thing is, on their table so they can sit across from each other and enjoy magical experiences. I kind of wonder, if the metaverse name is going to be kind of like the information superhighway, kind of a thing we joke about in the future. So I guess we'll see, because it's really hard to define.
Metachain 3.
Anybody else want to stab at that? Gaming leads the way into the metaverse. Like, what are your nuances to that title?
A few years ago, I read an old book. It was published in 1938 called Homo Ludens from a Dutch author. And he was looking into play. So obviously not into video games, but into the fact of play and how the act of playing shaped society and significantly shaped society. And it ties a little bit into what you just said, Jeri. It's about the fun fact. People, if they play, they just do things, they explore things. It's lighthearted, it's easy, it's accessible. The technology goes into the background because the fun part and the activity is in the foreground. And this had so much impact on so many aspects of society that I think now video games put this basically on steroids, so you can play in every free minute you have on your mobile device, or in every situation you might be in where you need a little bit of distraction, because this is a big part of it. It frees your mind a little bit from your obligations during the day. So I think that has a big impact on society in general, the fact of playing. And now we are moving into this next stage of society, detaching from screens. The internet moves into the space, the physical reality merges seamlessly with the digital reality and creates completely new experiences. And I think this will have a massive society impact. And coming from the angle of playing or games, I think will lead us ways that make the world a little better place and hopefully not a dystopian metaverse version. That's what I like about the fact that games might play a major role. So not necessarily a game engine, it's more the mechanics, how you involve people, the social aspect, and that's what I like about it.
I think you bring up an interesting point. You have to change users' behaviors, and games are a great way to do that. I love the story about Microsoft Windows and Solitaire and Minesweeper was one of the most effective ways to get people to understand how to click and drag. What's in the metaverse, what's the click and drag that we have to change user behavior?
I still love Pong.
Yeah, it goes all the way back, right?
And Dirk? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to add here, I think games have the advantage, right? You can actually experiment very quickly, right, with something, and you see if it works or it doesn't work. You don't need time, and you don't need a lot of money to produce something. So, but I think when we think about what games really are, but games is something I usually interact also with others. So I tend to challenge that the title of the panel here, and to say gaming is not the only one, right? There's other things, and I think especially when you think about socializing, we think 80% of people who are playing, they're playing to socialize, and I think that is also something, because the metaverse is not so going to succeed if you just have a little bit better gameplay. It's when you can interact with your like-minded friends and family or whoever in a better way.
And you're coming at this from a different angle too. You're coming at this from the point of view of Web3 as well. Like, do you see Web3 as maybe more important than whatever you would think of as the metaverse? Or?
Yeah, I think, okay, now I'm super biased, but I think the metaverse has to be something new, right? In order, people say it's the next internet and so on. If we just replicate what we have to build something within walled gardens, I think it's not going to change, because we have that. We have Minecraft now since, 8 years, 9 years or so, right? And all the other games. We had the Second Life before, right? So Web3 empowers something completely new, which is basically user-owned, user-centric things. I control things much better, and that's what is so novel in it, and that's what will create much, and it will also has the potential to disrupt, let's say, big tech, because it's coming from the people to do something new, which big tech cannot do because it actually disrupts their business model.
And Mark?
Yeah, I mean, I look at this like gaming and story and community are what drive any immersive experience, right? And so what the metaverse ends up being, I'm not sure, but what I certainly envision is, you know, almost like a Tilt 5. I envision this overlay of all kinds of different worlds on top of a physical world where we can all still interact and certainly be guided. But I think the thing that's been missing through this kind of product development cycle of the metaverse is that adoption drives what sticks, right? And so, you know, you brought up changing behavior. Changing behavior is really hard, right? It's really hard, and it might make sense for an OS, but I think what the worlds and the platforms and the end product will be is going to be fully dependent on what the heck the consumer actually adopts and enjoys, and they don't want to be tethered, and they do want to socialize, and they do want to kind of be part of the entertainment. So look, I'm bullish on it all, and I can't wait to like continue to glue crazy virtual experiences over Area 15's crazy physical experience, because I think it just extends what's possible.
And we're going to sort of switch things up again a little here and talk about our favorite metaverse fantasies, right? So, it's hopefully it's not gonna get too crazy here, but I give two of mine. Like I kind of always laugh when I hear people say the metaverse has already been done. We tried it and it didn't work. Like Second Life was the metaverse, right? And so. Then I think of the Star Trek holodeck, right? And to me, that is what kind of experience I would like to have in something like the metaverse, and it hasn't happened yet, right? And so that's like an answer to people who are very skeptical of the metaverse and think that it holds no promise, right? Well, the experience that I envision getting will be much different than anything we have today. The other thing that's interesting to me right now is when we get to real reusability of all of the assets that get created, and we also get to AI-generated assets as well. And so the portability of these things that are being created, say, by game developers. My usual fantasy is that Rockstar Games is going to go build New York City and all of the characters in it. And then they're going to trade it over to Ubisoft, which has built Paris, right? And then NVIDIA is going to come and take some of these things because they need to test their self-driving cars, and in order to do that, they need the entire United States built out, right? And when these companies across the industrial metaverse, enterprises, gaming, all start trading these things around, then it's going to feel like we've got something like a metaverse. And anyway. Anyone else want to jump in with their fantasies?
I can start. So I think, speaking of the fantasy, ideally, in the future, we all, from user perspective, going to have one locker, right? And in that locker, we have all our assets in there. We have our, in quotation marks, identity in there. And I can then move around, what you just said, Dean, between the different worlds without having to worry. Because when you think about it today, right, when you want to draw the parallel, right, when you want to, let's say you have a virtual car in one metaverse and you want to use another metaverse, like when you go from, let's say, France to Germany, and you have to stop at the border and have to hand over the car and have to buy a new car, right? The result is you have less money to spend in France in that case, right, or to invent something new. Or take another example in real life. Let's say you're a big fan of animals, you want to have a pet like a dog, right? Now you have to go to the pet store, you can play around as much as you want with the pet there, you can do everything, closed metaverse, right? And now you have to leave the store, right? And now it's not with you anymore, right? But you want it to be with you all the time, right? We want to give it a name. You want to play it around with it. You want to experience the world with it. And I think that is somehow what is very important, which will change actually also the way people will interact together on a global scale, right? Because we see that, for instance, in Upland. So when we open up in San Francisco, but we have people coming from all around the world who have never been to San Francisco and gather together in so-called nodes and do things together what they want to do there, right? Like creating an artist district, right? Where they can display their artists and art and so on, right? But they're completely different, but they're like-minded, they're together. So that's what the metaverse will deliver. You can transport your goods, and it takes away the borders, which are completely arbitrary, right? And that is, I think, where and that's speaking to, I think Neil said it, right? This is what we'll see in the society shift in the future. And I'm 100% sure that will come. In 50 years' time, we'll just say, oh, yeah, sure.
I'll actually jump in.
Okay.
I'm going to jump in only because I was on a panel, I don't know, maybe a month ago for Blue Loop's Innovation Awards, and I was asked the question, not specifically to the metaverse, but what's kind of your tech dream state? And my answer was holodecks. And like at Area 15, we have this big space that's like a 360-degree projection mapped room, and the floor is projection mapped, and we can change it in all kinds of crazy ways. But I want to change it like the holodeck. And I want you to be able to pick your own story. And I want like the projection mapping and the AR and the soundscapes and all of that stuff to change based on who you are and how you're interacting with that environment. I mean, that's when shit gets crazy, right? And I don't think it's that far away, frankly. I think there's lots of bits of the technology that can do this. There's guys like Spatial on the audio side.
But do you agree that people need to own this stuff? Because if they have to always, if they leave this and then have to give it back, right? Then people become less, creative, right?
Yeah, no.
Right?
Fair enough. Like I wasn't even contemplating the ownership bit. And I agree with you, by the way. My only comment is, at the moment, we've created barriers to entry for normal consumers to interact with the blockchain. And it's partially why we've seen kind of the decline in like these big NFT events and NFT kind of blocked ticketing. It's so complicated still. And I think it's also interesting that we've now seen the shift from NFTs to digital objects that are just based on cash, which is kind of the opposite of what we're trying to accomplish. And I was actually just on another panel with a woman who has a company that has basically created a blockchain contract for physical items, for like tracking them through their entire life cycle, from shipping and sales and ownership. And so I think like that's happening either way. But I do completely agree. Microsoft had built this amazing Minecraft Earth project. I don't know if you guys have seen that. And they built it before the pandemic, and they were about to launch this thing, but it enabled people, and that would have been Microsoft owned, but it allowed people to do these amazing kind of construction projects together in the physical world. And then the pandemic hit, and so it just kind of disappeared. But I love that kind of idea where you can actually all socially build together, own your house, kind of own your bricks, right? It's a very cool idea.
All right, we've touched on blockchain. Let's stop it from taking over our metaverse panel now. So.
Can I riff on that a little bit, but not blockchain? My dream is that the mega corporations stop trying to scoop up the metaverse, whatever it is, and build moats around it and overhyping it, and just let it evolve. And just to, I believe it was your point, let the customers tell us what it is. Exactly. How far can we move their behaviors and go from there?
For me, it's pretty simple. Today, a lot of passengers perceive rides as very dull rides, so transit time for many of them is lost time. In the future, I see people getting into cars or vehicles to experience something, so like your personal theme park right in front of your door, because I'm totally convinced that this combination of haptic feedback, of real world or physical world influence to digital experiences, and this combination is pretty intriguing. So very simple, I'd like to take a lot of people into the Motorverse in the future.
Okay. Let's see, so this is also an interesting one. Like, what historical parallels would you point to just instruct us all about this moment that we're in, where we're contemplating.
Can you say that again?
We're contemplating the metaverse, but what historical parallels just come to mind?
Got it.
I think you see that in any emerging tech. I mean, we could take a look at, home computers, for example. There was, a bifurcation there. There's going to be computers that were for professional uses. They did spreadsheets really well. They had like green screens, but you couldn't play a game on them. And then there were like clearly like gaming machines. And I remember ads back in those days, like, it's going to revolutionize your home. You're going to amortize your bills on it, and kids are going to play games and learn. And really, for the longest time, it was just split in half, where there were machines and software dedicated to productivity, and games are dedicated to games. I think you see that time and time in different industries where there's a split. And I'm a bit frustrated looking out there. There's a lot of platforms out there just trying to do it all, just do everything for everyone and boil the ocean, and it doesn't seem, to work. Horizon comes to mind, right? Ooh, I said it. I'm sorry, but it doesn't really serve anyone.
You said that
really.
in front of the Upland guy.
No comment.
From my perspective, I think it feels like I'm a digital native, born '81. So when I bought my first computer, entering the internet, it still did like dialing in, and then you had this AOL screen coming up, and you had this little tiles. Okay, here you can chat, and here you can write an email, and here you can buy something, and here you can read the news. But you for the first few month or year, you never left really this space. And it reminds me a little bit where we are right now in terms of metaverse. So there's this extremely walled garden. Everybody still thinks, okay, this is how it needs to work. Nobody will buy books online, was back then, or shoes online, or clothes online, but we don't know where we are heading, and it will suddenly accelerate so fast. We'll see new UI methods that we don't yet think of, because we take a lot of the traditional ways to interact with digital content now in our metaverse thinking. So once this breaks loose a little bit, then it will suddenly open up so many more possibilities. And coming back to the title, if it's playful, if it's fun, I think the adoption will happen way more faster. But it reminds me on this AOL screen, our current state.
I'm just reminded of some of the early internet websites where you actually had Flash or something installed. You'd walk to a store to buy something, then you'd walk somewhere else to check out, and it kind of feels like we're at that point too, where sometimes there's unnecessary metaversy things that we're doing just because we can. In the end, it's like, okay, Amazon has one-click buy. That's what we really need, and those things will emerge in time in the metaverse.
I don't know if everybody needs to answer this one, maybe just one person, but what do you think has to happen for game companies to control their own destiny in the metaverse? Nobody can answer if nobody wants to as well.
I mean, I can answer from our perspective. I mean, we keep looking at the first challenge is it's so disparate at the moment, right? We don't even know where to kind of build if we wanted to extend, because we are a company and we do have massive competing priorities to develop new experiences and attractions and new venues. And so we're really trying to figure out what is kind of the right path for us. It's a natural path. I mean, it makes more sense for us as a physical venue than most likely most companies on the planet, just because it's so parallel to what we're doing. But I think it has to be, it has to be an open platform, right? I mean, there has to be a way that we're all kind of building together to create one larger and larger experience. But again, there's so many walled gardens at the moment.
That's going to be tricky for them, though, because they're going to have to cannibalize their profit centers, and I think that's going to be a challenge for.
I don't know. I mean, I think that if you think about it as a marketplace where you're empowering transactions within whatever the metaverse ends up being, and any individual can go and participate and own their own store or their shop, or sell virtual wear, whatever the heck it is. I think that's a model that makes sense and does
Well, it
enable.
really
but
makes
I-
sense. I mean,
but-
Valve's been doing it forever. You can buy hats up the wazoo from Valve.
But the game companies are just clearly in the innovator's dilemma, right? Because right now, when you think about it, right, now you produce skins or whatever, and all of a sudden, you know what? You're my customer or consumer. You can sell it. I don't take the revenue anymore. It's just not going to work, right? And we've seen that over and over in other industries, right? I mean, it's possible to reinvent oneself, right? We've seen that with Netflix going from the CD business or DVD business to online streaming, now also to gaming, by the way, right? So, but it's going to be tough, and there will be the Kodaks of the world in the gaming sector who we're going to see who are going to just disappear because they didn't have the guts to change their business model early enough.
I do think we're also getting to this notion that maybe it's not the game companies that are going to lead the way to the metaverse. It's the gamers and the creators.
Yeah.
And they're going to create things that the game companies may not like because they're going to mix around all the Disney characters with the DC characters or whatever, and they're going to violate all the intellectual property laws there are, and then they're going to use generative AI, and it's going to do even more of that, right?
Well, I was going to say exactly. So right now, because when you think about it, you always have the problem, of course people want to have a Mickey Mouse or whatever IP, right? And it's very strong with certain people. But now everyone can become a designer, because normally when you ask people, hey, create your own stuff, right? Who knows how to operate Photoshop or Blender or whatever tools? Right now with generative AI, I can say in human words, hey, create me a palm tree with a dog on top and whatever, driving a car. And then it creates something for you as a starting point. And that will create so much more IP in the future, right, which will compete against the standard IP. And there will be so funny thing. I mean, we've seen that with the Bored Apes and all that. We already seen the start of it, even though that was not really generative AI. But when the generative AI tools are given into the hands of the consumer, I think there will be a lot of innovation.
I think there is the whole Web3 movement. I know it's more about the metaverse, not so much about blockchain Web3, but you can't separate both, to be honest. And in the technology, also with what started with NFTs, is so much potential for creators, for game companies, for indie studios to come up with ideas, items, objects, games where they can participate. Even though they don't have control over it, how it will evolve, but the royalty might be attached to an item. Today we always think about NFTs, okay, is this one final piece of work? But think about like textures and think about like simple elements, and if you then mesh them up, you still could participate with a royalty distribution. So I think with the whole decentralization aspect and with a clear who created it aspect to it, this could be very interesting. And you can't put all the game companies into the same bucket, because we work with a lot of indie studios, and they're very open-minded for new technologies, new ways. They push the boundaries. We have two fantastic studios we work with, for example, Shell Games and Arvory. They push our technology to the limit, come up with new ideas, and those partnerships are super valuable. And I think these indie game developers will play a massive, massive role in what's happening in the next few years.
And we should wake our audience up a little bit and do a little poll. How many people here believe that gaming will lead the way to the metaverse? Raise your hand, please.
Yeah, I love you guys.
I guess we have a self-selected crowd here too, but hey.
Maybe it was because of the title. I don't know.
Okay. Does anybody have a question that gets to some of this title, I guess? Okay, go ahead. Great.
Sorry, I'm going to take us back to the blockchain for a second. If it's true that gaming is going to lead us into the metaverse, one of the things that sticks out to me is the generally negative feeling among gamers towards NFTs and other forms of tokenization. So my question is, how do companies overcome that? What's the value prop that can be offered to gamers that will make them see the value
And if gaming is going to lead the way into the metaverse, how do we overcome the negative view of NFTs and blockchain among gamers, I guess? Right?
So maybe first of all, let's think about why there is a negative attitude towards NFTs, because we have seen a lot of scam and fraud in the last few months. And this basically led to this very bad perception, because if you take it back to the essence, there is something extremely valuable for creators and for gamers in uniquely identifiable digital objects. So if you buy something, like Dirk said, a skin or something that personalizes your experience, and at a certain point you want to get rid of it, but you spend some money on it, you can offer someone else to take it and to use it. I think that's extremely valuable. Also knowing the fact, we look at a lot into Gen Z research. For many of them, the digital items are stronger status symbols than the physical items. And why is that so? Because it's like unique, it's unique to them, it has some value, but now suddenly you can transfer this value. So there is this economic effect. So it should be done right, it should be extremely valuable to gamers. And for the creators, participating in the royalties, it's the easiest way. I mean, back in the days when everybody copied music or games, nobody did this, of course, but now this excludes it, and now they have a very fair way to participate in the commercial aspect of their creations. And there are many people we work with in the creative space aren't commercial talents, they're creative talents, and they don't need to take care of this any longer if the technology really is used to their benefit. But take away the scam part, and it will take another year or two until this is, hopefully, that the trust is regained. I see a massive benefit. They shouldn't be too skeptical in general.
Yeah.
Okay. First, does anybody want to finish up with anything? Any sort of parting comment?
No, just quick. I think what big game companies, if you people are change resistant, right? And when you now add, hey, now we have my Grand Theft Auto or whatever game you take, right? So, we introduced the NFTs. People don't like that, right? Because they want to do what they ever have done, right? But as we know, there will be new games coming out over and over again. If they have, in a natural way, integrated, the idea that you can sell something or rent it out to someone and maybe earn something, I think then it's going to happen that people will accept it more. And Nils is completely right. In 5 or 10 years, there will be actually no games anymore who do not have the possibility to use, well, the technology of NFTs might not be called like that, will be called differently, collectibles or whatever.
Right here. Yeah.
Sorry, I think your question about whether gaming is going to lead us into the metaverse, I think the answer is quite clear. In fact, it all started with gaming. So the question is, beyond gaming, where do you see the metaverse developing? And of course, we have seen brands now going in there, all dabbling with it, right? But gaming is a given. Beyond that, where does it go?
Personally, for me, it's education, because now we suddenly have the opportunity to let people experience things. And the way we learn is, back in the days we read books, we might remember, then we watched documentaries. It was already better because it was a visual stimuli to it. Now we can experience the things, and we all know once we have experienced things, we'll remember them forever. So there is a massive opportunity to take students, to take people to places that suddenly the experience sticks with them and they learn stuff they otherwise would never have learned in that way. Mm-hmm. So that's where I see a massive opportunity.
And I'd say, enterprises enabled by tools like Omniverse from NVIDIA, they're creating digital twins, and digital twins have extreme economic value associated with them, because they basically let you test out, the simulations of your planned real-world factories, and you outfit those factories with sensors. The sensors feed back information into the digital twins, and you figure out how to fix your factories much better. Oh, go ahead.
We'd all be very rich, man.
I'm dead.
Well, you will be still alive as your avatar, actually.
I think it does take time. new industries, new markets, new, interactions never come as fast as we hope, right? So,
We'll be living in a simulation. Right? Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everybody.
Everyone.
Cheers.